It's the Real Estate Podcast, brought to you by ANZ Home Loans for financial well-beings.
Hey, welcome back to the Real Estate Breakfast as we connect you to the best property information across Australia 7 days a week. Yes, talking to all of the real estate experts, and you can stream us anytime, anywhere on iHeartRadio, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, as well as Amazon. Hope your weekend is going well. Sunday morning, February the 23rd today, and it was another very busy week for us, including, of course, the RBA rate announcement on Tuesday, which headed in the right direction. On Monday, we spoke with Eliza Owen from CoreLogic, and you might have heard us talking about lower interest rates in 2025 could supercharge Australia's housing market. In fact, one of the stats that she talked about on Monday was historically for every 1% drop, national dwelling values increased by 6.1%. And also this week we spoke with Sarah Meganson from Finder, and she was talking about first home buyers, particularly around all of these temptations that you have on your phone, which is money that you're spending rather than saving for your property. We caught up with the CEO of Jellis Craig, Andrew Mackay, who was here. We also spoke to Margaret Lomas, who talked about these house median prices being reported that more than likely, a lot of the times, they are unit prices, not houses. And we were also in Perth catching up with Trent Fleskin. So that is all coming up on our Sunday morning. Next.
We are your local source for unbiased, expert insights into the world of real estate. We are not a real estate company. Our only objective is to help you better understand the real estate market.
And Eliza is with us from CoreLogic this morning. Premium suburbs in Sydney and Melbourne often act as bellwethers for the broader market. Now, I'm sounding a little bit like you here, Eliza. That is such an economist word.
Yeah, a friend of mine was telling me that it actually goes back to agricultural terms. It's something to do with a sheep that leads the flock and has a little bell around it. Okay. But when we talk about it in economics, we basically mean a market leader. So a stat that you can watch out for, that when it changes, it's kind of a first sign that other changes will sort of permeate throughout the rest of the market.
Yeah, and while rate cuts play a role in the housing demand, also got to have a look at these other factors like investor interest, migration trends. Gee, how is that going to sort of play out during 2025? And local economic conditions. All of that really does matter just in terms of what happens with not only the interest rate, but the calendar year of real estate.
Yeah, absolutely. So some of the other factors that we're looking out for in 2025 that could influence the market are things like a normalizing level of overseas migration. Obviously, we got a lot of catch-up migration in 2022 when borders reopened to overseas migrants post-COVID, but that is starting to settle down now. And in most regions, it is settling back down to pre-COVID averages. So that will affect probably rental demand, first of all, because overseas arrivals are more likely to rent when they first arrive in Australia. That could in turn affect the investment proposition for some markets. The other thing is that investor activity rose very strongly through 2024, and that pushed up values, particularly in Queensland, WA and South Australia, which attracted a higher share of investment activity through 2024. Now, investors, believe it or not, have affordability considerations as well. There will come a point where prices get too high that the house or unit doesn't deliver the same kind of return that it may have done over the past few years. And for that reason, we think investor activity could be a little softer, particularly in those states through 2025, even if interest rates move lower.
Yeah, I think the investors are going to be a cohort to watch with a lot of interest. Okay, so as we mentioned, it is all happening tomorrow afternoon. Got to get a prediction from you, Eliza. Which way do you think it's headed?
Oh, look, I think there's a greater likelihood that the RBA will move the cash rate lower than not. And that's come off the back of an incredibly good inflation report for Q4, which shows inflation continuing to ease. Core inflation was actually lower than where the RBA expected it to be at the end of last year. And we've also seen in the labour market, even though the unemployment rate remains low, the wages growth is starting to moderate, and there is some sign that the labour market is coming into a better balance of supply and demand. So that's going to give the RBA some confidence as well. So I'm hoping for good news. I've been wrong before, but we'll see how we go.
Don't navigate the real estate market alone. Let us help guide you in the world of real estate every day. Make better informed decisions with the latest news and insights.
And it is very difficult to have that temptation constantly and those habits constantly and to not spend. It's very, very different to what we grew up with. And in fact, when I bought my first property, I was in far north Queensland and shops weren't even open on a Sunday. So it was very difficult to spend money on a weekend. You could only go to the shops on a Saturday, and Sunday, the only essential shops like grocery stores were open. You compare that to someone today who can shop in bricks and mortar stores. They can be on social media and purchase something from anywhere in the world with the click of a few buttons. We've taken so much friction out of the purchasing process that you now don't even need to have the money. You don't even need to be able to afford what you're buying. You can buy it and pay using buy now, pay later platforms where you pay it off over time. So we're creating these opportunities to spend that have just completely shifted the way that young people earn and spend their money. So it is a completely different environment to the one that we grew up in. We need to think about that when we're trying to teach our young people how to make their own decisions to do with how they spend and save as they're growing up. We need to really actively consider some of these things. And we can't expect the same from young people today that we had 20, 30 years ago when the culture has shifted so much and the situation is just so different. It is a lot harder to say no and to stop spending when the opportunities are plentiful and relentless compared to what we had.
Yeah, so social media, in other words, is costing you an arm and a leg. If you actually destroy your phone or go to one of those real basic phones, you're going to save money in the long term. And it reminds me of a story about the actor Christopher Walken. He has not got a cell phone, never had a cell phone, has never sent a text in his life, has never sent an email. I just think, who's better off here, eh? Christopher Walken or all of us walking around with that digital footprint in our pocket?
Oh, 100%. I think he definitely has more freedom and less mind clutter, thinking about all of these things all the time is definitely, it's a consideration that I think people don't give enough attention to. The fact that eating out when I was growing up, when I was a child, eating out for dinner was for such a special occasion. It happened on birthdays and a few times a year. It was not something we did all the time. These days, eating out or getting food delivered for a lot of people and a lot of families, that happens several times a week. And if you just take something like that and look at the impact that has on your finances over time, that has an incredible impact on your ability to save and on your habits when it comes to spending. It is so easy to rack up these kind of money leaks and for them to impact your ability to save, your emergency funds, your ability to pay for your bills. Add on to that the fact that getting credit, whether it's a credit card or buy now, pay later, is really quite easy these days for people to spend money they don't have. And then you add into that the fact that the prospect of buying a home for a lot of people seems so impossible and such a far off dream. They've kind of abandoned it and decided instead, I'm going to enjoy my life and spend my money on things that bring me happiness day to day. So you've got that cultural shift where owning a home isn't necessarily a goal for a lot of people anymore because it seems so impossible. So they're going to spend their money to make themselves happy day to day. So when you factor all of those things together, the need to have a 6-figure deposit seems like a very big and impossible task for a lot of people. And so it does influence the way that people spend and save.
It's a great time to be coming into the industry. You've got these rate cuts. There's quite a lot going on. I think it's going to be a bit of a boomer sort of 2025, 2026 year. And one of the things I'm always interested in is the culture around looking after newbies that come into the real estate industry. Not all of them are well served by upper management, probably fair to say. They can go in, they can be told, hey, these are the sort of numbers that we'd expect you to do. The pressure is on from the minute they walk in the door, which is really not the way to handle it. So there's always that little fine line, isn't it, in terms of how you deal with new people coming into the industry?
Oh, absolutely. And I think there's a proper war for talent in our industry. We need more good quality people joining the real estate industry at every level, be that at management, be that in the sales arena or in the property management space. But I think the great challenge is that our industry is often misunderstood around the roles and responsibilities of what we do day to day, and we don't do a great job of educating people on how to get started and what they need to think about. But I also think that many principals, they're so busy in their day-to-day that they don't understand what it means to onboard and induct and give people an opportunity to be successful in their own right. And that's something we work incredibly hard at with Jellis Craig. And I do believe if I was advising anyone who was looking to come into the industry, you do need to think about the size and the scale of the organisation that you're joining and whether they have those systems to allow you time to learn and environments to learn and to learn from the best practitioners. So I think overall, we're really looking forward to the opportunity of welcoming new people to the industry in the 2025 year. We think it's a great time to enter the industry at this point in time.
And you're right in terms of, CEOs being so important, but for every minute you spend with a new agent, that is tenfold in dollars in your pocket. So that's probably the way to think about it. Now, these days, you want to keep a really good sense of balance and well-being because not everybody can manage that. And you can get way too focused on the work, Andrew. We've all been guilty of this and lose out that core strength to success of health and balance, which in itself can fuel professional success.
I think post-COVID in Melbourne, in Victoria, where we suffered significant lockdowns, that nothing could be truer in regards to the importance of wellness and balance. It's something we're incredibly aware of at Jellis Craig. We're actually running our first wellness conference for our whole team this year in May, where we'll be spending the morning educating people on how to look after themselves both physically and emotionally and be the best versions of themselves in life, not just in real estate. But I think the most successful people that I see in real estate are those that do have great balance. They've got good family lives. They understand it's important to exercise and look after themselves, and they know how important it is to be on when it comes to work and day-to-day practice. But as soon as you get one of those things out of balance, something tends to fall apart. So we're very aware of it. Real estate can be a fast-paced industry, but I'm actually very much of the view that people need to slow down a little bit more to speed up over the long term. We'd much rather build careers here than have people come and go because they burn out too quickly.
Let's take South Australia for example. Under houses, when you're looking, you'll get mostly in the cheaper suburbs, those semi-detached. They call them masonettes in South Australia. We know them as duplexes. They're all freehold title. They all come with their own block of land around them, and you can do, what you will with that block of land if it's big enough. I've got some down there that I've been able to, cut off the backyard or further subdivide. But the house that you're buying is more than likely attached to the house next door, which puts then a limitation as to how much development you can do if that's what you want to do. Similarly, in WA, we're looking at mostly duplexes where, again, they are in fact either joined to a house behind them or next to them, or situated on a very small block on a duplex block. So sometimes you have to buy both. Sometimes that duplex block may have been further subdivided in more recent years. But if you're just talking about straight out houses in that list, the only two places where you're going to buy them is, interestingly enough, Melton South in Victoria, and Midland in WA.
Wow. So that is very interesting to know just about the terminology. And most people, they read these sorts of reports and just take it for granted that we are talking about houses, but not necessarily the case. Well, let's have a look at Melton then, because this is located 30 k's from Melbourne CBD. We've spoken about Melton on the podcast before because it does remain one of the most affordable suburbs in the city of Melbourne, with a median house price, they are saying 465 grand. Buyers in this price range can secure a small home, or they do say a townhouse here, Margaret, making it an attractive option for first-home buyers.
And look, it definitely is an attractive option for first-home buyers. Lots of talk about more infrastructure being taken out that way. So for a very long time, it's actually been the same price or sometimes a little bit cheaper to secure a block of land and build a house in Melton than it has to buy an established house, which is upside down from most areas. And so we saw a lot of people attracted by that, moving out to Melton, buying their blocks of land, building their little project homes. And now we're finally starting to see that come to an end, and there's not as much land available, but we still are seeing house prices well under the 500,000. I found a couple in the early 400s as well, and you're going to get roughly about a 4 to 5% yield on them.
Now, Trent, what about what the experts are saying? This transition from a white hot to a red hot market, some people might not know what that means.
Yeah, exactly right. It's exactly what the Perth market is. White hot being absolutely boiling over the pot, to red hot meaning your pasta's getting cooked nicely. At the moment, people are looking at the data in this isolation of a 4 or 5 month period and saying, oh, Perth's market's cooling. But the reality is we're coming off of a 70% increase in growth in most notable suburban areas in Perth over the last 5 years. And there has to be a point at some time where people are a bit fatigued. They're taking a second to think. They're taking a second to get their pre-approvals reassessed because they can't buy what they were trying to buy 6 months earlier and missed out on. And that is what happened over that last quarter of Perth. One thing that we're pretty confident on, and I'm pretty strong on, is the demand-supply relationships in Perth have not improved, in that we haven't figured out how to supply the amount of houses that we currently need for the amount of people coming into Perth. And that when you think about just basic relationship with affordability, Perth's median salary is higher than Sydney's. Sydney's median house price is nearly double Perth's. We pay the same interest rates. We have the same laws about serviceability with all the lenders in the country. And so nominally, Perth's theoretical affordability cap is actually Sydney's price, because you can see where Sydney's obviously maxing out from affordability levels rather than really demand and supply. So we've actually got still a lot of fat to go. So for us to come off these 23, 24% growth years and come back down to, let's say, 10%. It is white hot to red hot. It is not slowing to negative. That is, we don't have that capacity to be going backwards where sellers need to sell more than buyers need to buy anytime soon.
We connect you to the best real estate information across Australia. The Real Estate Podcast.